Employees invite the janitor to their luxurious party, but his hidden talent shocks everyone. Ethan leaned on his mop, watching the hurried pace of the law firm's employees echo above him. Every click of their heels reverberated through his chest like a countdown to a notion he'd long buried. His dreams were as far away as the $10,000 suits floating above him. The soft hum of conversation jumped overhead, but he remained an invisible specter, cleaning up the remnants of their ambitious endeavors, his own aspirations drowning in the mundane. Another day of washing floors while bills mounted and reminders of Emily, his estranged daughter, loomed heavy in his mind. Could he muster the courage to reach out, to bridge that gap shaped by resentment and money? He felt guilt creeping in like smoke through a crack, remembering her struggles with student loans while he was trapped in a world measuring worth through glass walls, a world deaf to the quiet despair of a janitor. Did they even know his name? What did they see, a man with a broom or a ghost they barely glanced at? Only weeks before he had dared to hope, imagining a conversation over coffee, a chance to reconnect. Yet now, a harsh reality ground him down. His dreams felt like trash waiting to be emptied, just another pile of forgotten garbage in a soaring skyscraper of ambition. As the firm prepared for its annual gala, the employees spun in a whirlwind of excitement, oblivious to his presence. Ethan overheard snippets of the event buzz. Invitations were to be sent, arrangements made. The anticipation in the air felt dense, yet he remained an afterthought, a mere shadow left with the trash. An overwhelming wave of disheartenment washed over him. Why had he even hoped for recognition? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That night, with glitzy dresses swirling in the air and laughter echoing off the walls, an unexpected tremor rattled through Ethan. He had been reluctantly invited, his heart clenching as he stepped into a sea of luxury, feeling wholly the other, a singular drop in a splashing ocean. Visibly out of place, he lingered by the food table, half distracted by the culinary marvels while the crowd gravitated toward its glittering core. When a high-powered lawyer declared a distraction, he felt in his bones the pull of the guitar, left awestruck in the corner. Without thinking, he brushed off the unease and picked it up, numb to the rising hesitation in his chest. As his fingers strummed and a melody emerged, the room hushed, curiosity cutting through the chaos. The notes he released cradled stories of heartache and resilience, painting shadows alongside the illumination of the evening. And just then, a figure appeared. Emily stepped through the doorway, her face a reflection of disbelief, frozen in place at the sight of her father, a familiar stranger. The air thickened, laced with unspoken memories and unresolved pain, as the haunting strains of his voice drew her closer, like moths to a flickering flame. Desperation clawed at Ethan's throat, each note a cry for acknowledgement, a father's yearning, an artist's revelation. Would these echoes shatter the walls of neglect between them, or would they only deepen the chasm of sorrow? Heart racing, he faced the unknown, feeling the crowd transform around him, realizing too late that this was not just music, it was a reckoning. They were beginning to see what would happen next. Would they grasp the depths hidden beneath their misconceptions, or would they turn away once more, leaving Ethan to navigate the storm of his own bottled anguish? Ethan's fingers danced over the strings as the last note reverberated through the air, lingering like the final breath of a recollected dream. The applause that broke out surprised him, resonating with an energy he had never experienced in such a setting. It was a mixture of excitement and disbelief, a palpable tension that thrummed in tandem with the music. And yet, despite the cheers rattling through his chest, his gaze remained locked on Emily. She stepped forward, her expression a maelstrom of confusion and intrigue. In that moment, his heart swelled with a painful hope, a flicker of possibility that the years of silence might crack open like the shell of an egg. But what if she turned away again? The thought coiled tightly in his mind, squeezing the courage out of him. He had stepped into her world, one knee-deep in glamour, only to expose himself before a daughter he hardly recognized. "Ethan?" Her voice sliced the air, hesitant and yet tender. She was searching. For what? Recognition, approval, perhaps an apology. He knew they both carried burdens too heavy for one conversation. I didn't know you were coming," he managed, holding her gaze as the room faded into murmurs around them. The lawyer who had initiated this whole whirlwind focused again on his guests, the applause dying down as drinks were poured, and laughter erupted anew. "You surprised everyone," she said, a hint of a smile threatening the corners of her mouth. But her eyes, those deep wells of emotion, spoke volumes of a sorrow that mirrored his own. Each note played had been an offering, an attempt to cross an ocean of unexpressed feelings. They were still standing on opposite shores. Looking up, Ethan noticed a cadre of employees converging around him. Conversations sparked like wildfire, filled with intrigued questions about his talent, the story behind his music, and a flurry of compliments. Yet the noise around him turned into a dull roar, slowly erasing the connection he yearned for with Emily. He wanted to drown out the frivolity of their chatter and focus solely on the woman before him. "Why didn't you tell me you played?" she asked, genuinely puzzled. The sudden warmth of her curiosity ignited something within him. Here was a chance to bridge their chasm with honesty. "I didn't think it mattered," he confessed, his voice quieter, laced with vulnerability. "I'm just the janitor, after all." "Not just the janitor," she whispered, a flicker of defiance shimmering in her dark eyes. "You're my dad, and you have a gift I've never seen before." Those words hung between them like an unsolved riddle. Could she really see him? Could she extend her hand just when he had given up on reaching out? Would this shared moment lead to something more? Suddenly a voice broke through, the managing partner of the firm, a looming figure draped in authority and ambition. "Ladies and gentlemen, what an unexpected treat tonight. I believe the janitor has hidden talents after all. Perhaps he'd join us for the next set." Ethan's stomach twisted at the thought of performing again, his anxiety bubbling to the surface. What did that mean for him? To be drawn back into the spotlight at a firm that had always looked past him. "I can't," he blurted without thinking, unprepared to face a room full of faces that perhaps would never truly see him. But as he glanced at Emily, there was something in her expression, a gentle encouragement, a silent plea that urged him forward. As he wrestled with his internal battle, uncertainty enveloped him. Would he dare to confront this moment, to meet the unknown head-on, transforming not just a night of music, but a potential future with his daughter? Through the cacophony of their surroundings, armed with steely resolve and the embers of newfound hope, Ethan faced the possibility that tonight could be a fragile yet significant turning point. Should he seize that opportunity, step back into the spotlight, and perhaps reclaim his lost relationship? The time had come to confront not only the crowd, but the haunting silence that had lingered far too long between him and Emily. What awaited him on this path of revival as he embraced his identity, both as a musician and as a father? Ethan felt the moisture gather in his palms, the familiar surge of fear threatening to overshadow the fragile buoyancy of hope. The murmurs around him faded slightly, creating an almost dreamlike quality, where it felt as though time stretched thin. As the tension coiled tighter in his chest, he sought Emily's eyes, and there, amid the chaos, he found a spark that ignited a flame within him. "Just breathe," he whispered to himself, tapping into the lessons he'd learned over the years of playing alone in the quiet of his small apartment. Wasn't that what his music had always been about? A personal journey? This could be no different, he thought, if he chose to be brave. "Ethan, are you okay?" Emily's voice grounded him, breaking through the swell of noise. Her expression melded concern and curiosity, compelling him to respond. I'll try," he replied, reluctant to admit how afraid he was. The managing partner's eyes practically glowed with anticipation as he encouraged, "Come on, show us what you've got." For a moment, Ethan imagined telling the man that he had nothing to prove, that he didn't need validation from this world of glass and steel. But as he focused on Emily, the tension of expectation morphed into momentum. She believed in him. That shred of belief swept through him like a tide, washing away the self-doubt that had stalled him for far too long. He stepped toward the piano, each footfall resonating with purpose. The audience parted almost reverently, the laughter fading into a distant hum as he settled on the bench. A glimpse of Emily's encouraging smile set his heart racing, yet, paradoxically, calmed his mind. As his fingertips brushed against the keys, the crowd and their highbrow judgments fell away. He lost himself in the music, finding solace in the rhythm he conjured, the harmonies that unfolded like petals in bloom. The sounds flowed through him, confident, raw, and true. With each note, layers of pent-up emotions slipped through the cracks, the years of guilt and regret dissipating like morning fog beneath the sun's first light. As he played, Ethan became acutely aware of the room. Faces shifted from curiosity to awe, captivated by the tumult of the sounds that were both new and uniquely him. Here was the forgotten janitor, the man who swept floors and cleaned offices, and yet he belonged here, right now, more than ever. He played not just for the glances and whispers of approval, but for Emily and the chance of something more. In that moment of catharsis, Ethan realized that there was power in sharing his gift. A melody can bridge years of silence, fabricating connections where rifts once lay. Each chord was an apology, each crescendo a plea for understanding. When he finally halted, the last note evaporating into the air, that silence felt electric. A collective breath was held, as though they were all suspended in time, waiting for something to break the stillness. Ethan looked at Emily, and what he saw mirrored the revelation igniting within him. These exchanges could initiate dialogue, not only between them, but for his own identity. He wasn't merely a janitor, he was a father, a musician, a man capable of creating beauty out of hardship. The applause burst forth, a tidal wave of appreciation that enveloped him even as his heart raced. But amid it all, the overwhelming sense of gratitude was tethered to his daughter's reaction. There was pride shimmering in her eyes, piercing through the sentiment and reaching into the depths of his soul. Then, unexpectedly, a voice broke into his moment of triumph, the managing partner stepping forward, an ambitious glint igniting his stare. "Fantastic, Ethan. How about performing at our annual gala next month?" The offer hung in the air like an unspoken challenge, reawakening the doubt he had only just begun to quell. Would he be able to handle the pressures of a formal setting? As he felt a sudden weight settle over him, Ethan knew the offer held the potential to not just bridge the gap with Emily, but redefine who he was in a world that had always overlooked him. Now faced with a decision that could propel his artistic journey further, he had to confront whether this was the moment to embrace the heights he had long deemed unreachable, or if he would retreat back into the shadows from which he had emerged. He took a deep breath, the melody of self-discovery still echoing within him. The time had come to either accept or reject the opportunity unfolding before him, and he could feel the rhythm of that choice poised on the brink of a profound transformation. What awaited on the other side of this pivotal decision, and could he truly claim his place in the world outside the confines of his past? Ethan stood at the piano, the applause still ringing in his ears, yet beneath it lay an undercurrent of apprehension. The managing partner's offer hung like a weight in the air, and his heart raced with the sudden realization that he was teetering on the edge of possibility. How had he gone from cleaning office floors to contemplating a stage illuminated by spotlights? The exhilaration of performing was still coursing through him, yet the invitation thrust forth questions spiraling in every direction. If he accepted, would he remain true to himself? Would his past, rife with shadows and regret, follow him into the light? The music had unspooled the tightness in his chest, but this next step felt different, more monumental. Feeling Emily's gaze, supportive yet filled with expectancy, ignited a familiar tension. This was not merely about him. Their future weighed against the delicate balance of personal ambition and the bond they had forged through hardship. He had always shielded them both from the harshness of reality, pretending that survival was enough. But was it? Ethan. Emily's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts, her eyes locking onto his with fierce clarity. "What are you thinking?" His instincts urged him to evade her question, but the sincerity etched in her brow pushed him to confront the truth. "I'm scared." Of what? She pressed, drawing closer, her concern palpable. Of failing. Of dragging us into something that isn't real or worthy. The confession hung heavy between them. But what you did up there was beautiful, Ethan. It was real. And they saw it. The weight of her words struck him, and he began to contemplate the broader implications of the invitation. Surely this was more than a simple performance. It was a potential rebirth. The frightened janitor could evolve into a recognized artist. The man who swept floors could compose symphonies and find a place amid the cacophony of corporate chatter. Yet doubt nipped at the edges of his mind. Could he withstand the scrutiny of sophisticated audiences, the clinking glasses of privilege? Such places weren't made for him, not for someone who had spent years defining himself through menial tasks. Yet, somewhere inside, a flicker of determination ignited at the thought of overcoming that very narrative. Ethan, you need to decide if you want this, Emily stated firmly. Her words weren't merely supportive, they were a challenge, urging him to confront his potential head-on rather than retreat. The decision crystallized within him, weaving a tapestry of ambition intertwined with trepidation. Would he summon the courage to rise, to stake a claim on his identity? I've never performed in front of people like this, he admitted, vulnerability washing over him. What would it mean to be completely exposed, to deliver something raw, unfiltered, and true? You did it once already, she reminded him softly, and it was magic. Her faith was a lifeline. Memories flooded back, long evenings of crafting melodies in solitude. The sound of the piano resonated in his soul. Art was not circumstantial. It transcended spaces. Could he let go of the past and trust in the music to navigate the new terrain? Ethan could feel the resolve building, but in that second of clarity, another thought gnawed at him. What would be the fallout should he fail? Would it break them? Would he crumble beneath the weight of his own aspirations? His internal conflict churned like a tempest, tossing him between fear and hope. I'll think about it, he said, the weight on his shoulders more palpable than ever. As he considered the precariousness of his choice, he recognized this could carve the way to a different life. Accepting the invitation could embrace not just his music, but also all the parts of himself he had fought to reclaim. But as the noise of congratulatory chatter surrounded them, uncertainty clawed at him. If he stepped forward, what would he unearth? In that moment, Ethan felt the hard edges of ambition pressing against the soft confines of guilt and fear. He knew he needed to face the truth that awaited in that spotlight, whatever it might reveal. And deep down, a voice whispered, "What if you're meant to shine?" With his heart pounding a rhythm of hope and ambiguity, the path ahead seemed unclear. But he sensed that change, encapsulated in a single invitation, lingered on the horizon, waiting for him to embrace it. But what if claiming his new identity meant confronting an even darker truth hidden within his past? As he pondered this possibility, a rush of adrenaline surged through him, revealing that his performance might just be the beginning of a far deeper and more profound struggle. Ethan stood at the edge of decision, the lingering applause giving way to an oppressive silence within. Emily's eyes didn't waver. They bore into him like a spotlight. It felt as if the room around them had shrunk, compressing the weight of his dilemma into one taut moment. Acceptance or rejection. The scales tipped precariously. He glanced away, absorbing the frenetic energy of the post-performance mingling. Laughter echoed and glasses clinked, but it all sounded distant. Each smile and laughter echoed in stark contrast to his tumultuous heart. Would they still smile if they knew him? The janitor, the invisible soul sweeping shadows of life away, now a name on a clipboard and a face in the crowd. What if I'm only good in the shadows? He muttered, almost to himself. The thought staggered him as it collided with a barrage of repressed memories. Each one pulsated with the reality he had fought so hard to distance himself from. The crumpled bills that meant dinners of canned spaghetti, nights of empty dreams. Ethan. Emily's voice was steady, a lifeline amidst the chaos. You have to believe that you're more than that. You're more than just a position. Her words dug deeper than he expected, forcing him to confront the insecurities festering inside. He had relied on survival, while deep down, a voice in him clamored for ambition, for a chance to redefine who he was. Yes, he had been cleaning floors, but could he also compose melodies that danced on the breaths of listeners? Facing failure is part of this, isn't it? He replied, beginning to sift through his thoughts. But so is the fear of rejection. What if they don't see me? What if I'm just a fleeting moment? Or what if you're a breakthrough? She countered, determination lacing her voice. You won't know unless you try. Her eyes shimmered with unwavering belief, and it pushed him to examine the tension straining his resolve. Perhaps the fragility of his desire was the very thing that would propel him forward, a chance to become fully realized. He straightened, deciding that this moment of uncertainty would not define him. If he chose to accept, failure might ensue, but so too might triumph. Could it be that the risks of the unknown offered more than the safety of familiarity? I need to practice, he said, projecting a newfound clarity. I want to challenge myself, push my boundaries. Then practice, she affirmed, a smile breaking through the apprehension between them. Music is a journey, Ethan, not just a destination. The reality shifted slightly with those words. His mind flickered to the late night spent at the piano, surrendering to the keys, letting emotions pour forth like a river unleashed. It was in those moments of solitude he had felt most himself, a connection to something greater and more profound. But the thought of an audience, were they truly ready to bear witness to his vulnerabilities, his truth? The cocktail party would showcase talents crafted in glittering halls, homes of privilege. How would they react when faced with raw, untamed music arising from a janitor's heart? Determined to discover the answer, he took a deep breath. I'll prepare. I'll get better. A sense of agency enveloped him. With each conscious decision to step forward, he shed another layer of guilt. The echoes of his past started to fade into whispers. Perhaps this performance could serve not just as an unveiling, but as a reclamation of his narrative, a pivot toward the identity he craved. As the evening came to a close and the chatter morphed into adieu, Ethan felt invigorated by the unknown awaiting him. The invitation loomed closer, pulsing with possibilities, yet within it lay another dread. Would Emily still be there, shoulder to shoulder with him, when the price of his ambition increased? If he unlocked this door, what shadows would spill forth into the light? With newfound determination igniting a flame within, Ethan's resolve solidified. But alongside it the question lingered, festering in the back of his mind. What truths would he need to face from his past to genuinely claim his future? As he stepped into the night, uncertainty mixed with a heady rush of courage, fueling an inner conflict that awaited resolution. Barely restrained, it whispered ferociously, "Are you ready to confront the echoes of who you were?" Ethan awoke the next day with the sun filtering through his window, casting a warm glow over the clutter in his small apartment. The stillness of the morning anchored him momentarily, yet the crescendo of his internal dialogue refused to be silenced. The invitation felt less like a privilege, and more like a noose tightening around his neck. Was he really prepared to expose himself, not just as a musician, but as someone deserving of recognition? He dragged himself out of bed and made his way to the piano, its keys a familiar comfort beneath his fingers. The melody began as a whisper, hesitant yet yearning, and gradually swelled into something more profound. Each note echoed with the essence of his struggles, the longing to be seen, to belong, and ultimately to claim his place within a world that felt perpetually out of reach. This was where he found clarity, within the music. But as the last notes faded, doubt crept in. What if he could only express these feelings through the protective walls of his apartment? Had he been hiding behind the guise of the janitor, shielding his vulnerabilities? A memory surfaced, the day he'd been called to clean the gallery after an exhibit featuring conceptual artists from esteemed art schools. That day, he had shielded his creations, tucked them away, out of sight, believing them unworthy amidst the prestigious works displayed. The notion of confronting an audience terrified him. Did they truly want to hear the discord of his life, or merely the polished notes of a perfect performance? His phone buzzed, pulling him back into reality with its harsh digital sound. It was Emily, her message simple yet charged with encouragement. "Don't forget to practice today. Remember, the spotlight can shine just as brightly on you. Each word felt like both a nudge and a challenge, pushing him to reconcile the dissonance that lingered within. He glanced in the mirror, perplexed by the haunting silhouette of the man gazing back at him. The fear of judgment loomed over him, warning that the vulnerability of exposing his artistry might draw scorn instead of applause. What truths might he uncover if he dared to share his decades of unvoiced dreams and uncharted melodies? With renewed vigor, Ethan took notes, jotting down intentions. A personal manifesto to prioritize his dreams over his fears. He must face rehearsals not as a chore, but as a heart-opening journey. Guiding himself through the chaos of uncertainty, he decided to focus less on potential failure and more on the possibility of connection. The afternoon passed in a whirl of practice sessions, his fingers dancing urgently over the keys, accumulating myriad sounds that both expressed and excavated the layers of his existence. He branched out, beginning to compose, finding the intersection between his memories and unspoken ambitions. Somehow, this transformation felt necessary, as if he were shedding an old skin and bravely stepping into a new paradigm of self. As night fell, Ethan glanced at the invitation lying on the countertop, its edges worn from reverence. He could almost hear the whispers of those who had succeeded in turning their dreams into reality. Just as other artists had emerged from shadows, perhaps he could too. But the closer the date came, the heavier the weight of apprehension rested on his shoulders. Would he truly be ready to face whoever he once was, the janitor, and anyone expecting more from him? The thought filled him with both excitement and trepidation. Suddenly, a knotted feeling coiled in his stomach as he envisioned the stark contrast of his world against that luxurious party. The beautiful, polished lives he'd only glimpsed could weigh down the essence of who he was. Doubt swirled dangerously, yet amidst the turmoil, a glimmer of resolve sparked anew. "You're not just a janitor," he told himself, voice low but fierce. "You are more than your past." With that mantra echoing through the air, Ethan leaned into the balancing act of his dual existence. But there remained the unsettling question of how long he could keep both identities intact. As he prepared for the daunting night ahead, the thoughts wrestled furiously in his mind. Would he thrive in the spotlight, or crumble beneath its glare? The night was closing in. Would his music finally resonate within the hearts of those who heard it, or would he retreat, forever watching from the fringes? The stakes had never been higher, and the cacophony of uncertainty only grew louder. Ethan could only hope that the upcoming performance would answer a question he hadn't yet dared to articulate. Was he ready to take the leap into vulnerability, or would he agonize over the chasm of fear that sought to ensnare him? Ethan spent the following days caught in a whirlwind of practice and introspection. Each session at the piano became an exploration. He sought to unravel the complexities of his emotions through the music that resonated within him. With every note, he chipped away at the walls he'd built around his artistry. Yet still, the doubts hung like an ominous cloud overhead. As the date drew near, he felt the familiar dread strangling his creativity. He found himself oscillating between moments of fierce motivation and paralyzing fear. One afternoon, as he played a haunting piece that captured his struggle, each chord reverberated with anxiety and hope intertwined. Who was he trying to impress? And even more pressing, did he truly believe in himself? After an especially grueling session, he stared down at the piano keys, sweat beading on his forehead. A thought flickered in his mind. What was it that caused the founders of these galleries and performance spaces to break through their own fears? What had they sacrificed to gain the recognition and success that he craved? This contemplation churned within him, prodding him to reevaluate his own sacrifices for the sake of this dream. "What will you sacrifice, Ethan?" he whispered into the stillness of the room. This was not a passing thought. It struck him as a crucial question, one that required honest reflection. The answer felt elusive, yet he knew deep down that moving forward demanded more than raw talent. He began crafting a plan, an intentional strategy not just for the performance, but for his personal growth. It involved reaching beyond the confines of his familiar life, seeking input from others whose artistic journeys he admired. He called Emily and asked if she would join him at a local open mic. The prospect of performing in a less intimidating environment felt like the first step into a lighter atmosphere. As they sat together that evening, he unfolded his vulnerabilities to her, his fear of standing on a stage, the shame of his past as a janitor, the struggle to recognize his own worth. Each word released a weight he had carried alone for so long. "You have every right to be here," she said, sincerity glowing in her eyes. "Your music deserves to be shared, but you must believe it first." Her encouragement fueled a flicker of courage, igniting a thought he'd nearly squashed. Perhaps he could embrace his history rather than hide from it. The following days were marked by a new intensity. Each time he played, he asked himself not just what the notes communicated, but what story lay beneath each melody. He began to see his past experiences not as shackles, but as elements of his narrative that could enrich his music, giving it a unique resonance. Days turned into weeks, and anticipation morphed into a nuanced dance of anxiety intertwined with excitement as the event drew closer. The familiar invitation now felt different in his hands. It embodied more than just an opportunity to perform. It represented a chance to lay bare his soul. But before he could step fully into that light, he had to confront a final barrier, the nagging voice of self-doubt. Ethan found himself drawn into a spiral of overthinking. What if he faltered? What if his music fell flat? What if he lost himself in the vast sea of expectations? In a moment of resignation, he returned to the piano, the instrument that had become his sanctuary. Yet this time, instead of solely seeking solace, he committed himself to explore that fear head-on. What if his faltering was a part of his story? What if he embraced the potential for failure as a facet of vulnerability, beauty mingled with imperfection? As he played, something profound shifted inside him. The music became an intimate conversation between his fears and his aspirations. With each passing note, he felt a cleansing wave of acceptance wash over him. He wasn't just the janitor, he was also the musician, the dreamer, and the creator of his own destiny. Yet, as he neared the final bars of his composition, a realization washed over him. He was about to step into a space filled with strangers, each carrying their own expectations. Did he have the strength to reveal this raw, unfiltered self to them? Ethan paused, the weight of the invitation heavy in his thoughts once more. As he grappled with this pivotal moment of truth, a new question simmered within him, pushing him into an uncomfortable corner of self-examination. Could he look beyond the fear and fully embrace who he had become? With finality, he declared into the stillness of the room, "You're not just a janitor, and you are worthy." The night was creeping closer, teasing him with its potential. Would he find the courage to claim his identity in front of an audience, or would he retreat back into obscurity? As doubt and determination wrestled once more, the answer loomed just out of reach, waiting to be discovered. As the days passed, Ethan found himself caught in a push and pull between his growing self-acceptance and the enduring weight of insecurity. What he had once seen merely as an open mic became a crucible of growth, an opportunity not just to perform, but to unveil his identity to himself. Each practice session morphed into a ritual, where he faced the tension within, navigating between his ambitious aspirations and the nagging doubts that loomed like dense fog. One evening, with the notes from his latest piece lingering in the air, Ethan allowed his fingers to linger on the keys. He studied the patterns his hands created, marveling at the way music encapsulated both emotion and experience. Suddenly, realizing he had traditionally downplayed his past, he felt a shift. Why had he been ashamed of being a janitor? That role wasn't just a job. It was part of his journey, one filled with perseverance and hard work. What if he embraced it as a foundation rather than a hindrance? The thought sparked a rush of determination. He decided to weave this narrative into his performance. He visualized sharing fragments of his life that led him to the piano, the places he had cleaned, the people he had met. Each story could serve as a backdrop for the melodies he created, a bridge between the man he had been and the artist he aspired to be. Ethan's apprehensions transformed with this newfound perspective. No longer did he see the performance as an examination of his skill, but rather an expression of authenticity. However, as the night of the open mic approached, the vicious cycle of doubt returned with a vengeance. Would the audience appreciate his story? Would they resonate with the music born from his struggles? Desperate to dispel the encroaching fear, Ethan sought counsel from Emily once more. Meeting in a quaint cafe, he laid out his hesitations before her. "What if they don't see me for who I really am?" What if they see only the janitor? She leaned closer, her voice steady and encouraging. Ethan, the real question is, what do you see when you look in the mirror? You're not just a janitor. You're a storyteller. The music is your voice. You owe it to yourself to share it. The clarity in her words struck a deep chord. He wasn't merely there to perform. He was there to share a piece of himself. In doing so, he would invite others to reflect on their narratives, their fears, struggles, and triumphs. Still, the evening before the performance, self-doubt reared its head once again. He found himself replaying the same questions, battling against an inner critic that had, for far too long, occupied prime real estate in his mind. In an impulsive moment, he decided to step outside for some fresh air, allowing the moonlight to wash over him. As he stood there, he considered the building that loomed in the distance, a former concert hall he had often dreamed of filling with the sound of his music. Yet that bold urge to perform there felt light years away, at least until he realized that this open mic was a step in the right direction. What if he stepped onto that stage not just to sing, but to celebrate who he had become? Determined, Ethan returned home, making the pivotal decision to compose his introduction, a blending of his past with the music he adored. Every word crafted for that moment would serve as an opening, an invitation for understanding, and a call to connection. The night of the performance arrived, the air thick with possibility and anxiety. As Ethan stood backstage, chest pounding and heart racing, he thought back to the pivotal conversations he had with himself and with Emily. He was not alone in his feelings. This stage belonged to all those who dared to stand before an audience, bearing their souls in a world that often eclipsed vulnerability. He took a breath that felt like a declaration. It was time to confront the final barrier, the fear of inadequacy, the shadow of his past. In that moment, he recognized that authenticity was more powerful than perfection. As the host called his name, Ethan stepped forward, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. The spotlight felt different now. It was warm, inviting, encouraging him to unravel the tapestry of his existence through the music he loved. Yet, just as he took his position, a thought struck him. What if he faltered in front of the audience? Pushing through that fear, he sat at the piano, ready to transform the uncertainty into an extraordinary unveiling, one that could shift not just perceptions of himself, but also the audience's understanding of their own narratives. The moment of truth had arrived, pregnant with potential. But would he find the words and music to speak the story of his life? Ethan's fingers pressed down on the keys as the first notes rang out, echoing through the quiet venue like whispers of forgotten dreams. The spotlight cast a glow that felt almost sacred, illuminating not just his form, but the journey he had embarked upon. For the first time, he grasped the raw power of vulnerability. This was not just an act. It was a revelation. As he began to play, the familiar contours of his narrative emerged. He allowed the keys to express the tapestry of his life, the gentle lull of childhood, the turbulent waves of adulthood, and the steady rhythm of hard work as a janitor. With each chord, the hesitation slipped away, revealing a more profound truth buried deep within him. Ethan transformed every sonorous note into a reflection of his struggles, painting a picture both vivid and relatable. As he conveyed his story through music, their faces began to shift from blank curiosity to rapt attention. Yet even as he played, an uncomfortable flutter of self-doubt coiled within. What if they only saw the janitor, and not the artist he yearned to be? Moments flickered through his mind like strobe lights, instances of being overlooked, belittled, or dismissed. But just as those thoughts threatened to drown him, he redirected them into the melody, crafting a poignant narrative that encompassed both pain and renewal. The last note hung in the air like a suspended question. Silence enveloped the room, thick with anticipation. Ethan's heart raced as he finally opened his mouth to share his story. You see, every place I've cleaned, every late night I spent scrubbing floors, was a step toward this moment. Music found me in the quiet corners of mundane tasks. Each scrape of a mop against the tile taught me the value of persistence and hard work. As he spoke, he barely noticed how the audience leaned in closer, captivated. He had unlocked a door that shut him off from those moments of connection. No longer the janitor alone, He was transformed into the storyteller. At that moment, Ethan embraced his identity entirely. The applause erupted like fireworks, startling him from his reverie. Each clap felt like a bolt of electricity in his veins, an affirmation that he belonged in this space, that his story was worth telling. The validation surged through him, a whirlwind of emotions mirrored by the constant ebb and flow of music. The crippling self-doubt that had clung to him like a shadow began to dissipate, replaced with an undeniable sense of triumph. After stepping off the stage, basking in the echo of his performance, a small group approached him. Their faces reflected astonishment, perhaps even confusion. One woman, her expression a mixture of awe and curiosity, asked, "Where did you learn to play like that?" "I taught myself," he replied, a blend of surprise and pride filling his voice. The subtle shift in his demeanor wasn't lost on him. The realization settled in. He had not only shared his narrative, but had also inadvertently showcased his hidden competence, a talent he had kept under wraps for too long. Conversations flowed about potential collaborations, opportunities he had never dreamed could be accessible to a janitor. Each exchange left him feeling a little more grounded, a little more visible. Yet, amidst the excitement, an unsettling question lingered. Was this moment merely a fleeting spark, or would it ignite a path toward something greater? Days turned into weeks, and while Ethan embraced his blossoming connection with the music community, a flicker of uncertainty remained. His past as a janitor, once a source of shame, now seemed like a vital chapter in his narrative. But how far could he truly go? The memory of the former concert hall returned, echoing his dreams. He contemplated the next step, knowing deep down that this was a mere beginning, a spark that needed nurture. Should he take the leap toward pursuing a larger platform? The thought both thrilled and terrified him. As he lay awake one night, the hum of possibilities brought clarity. The time had indeed come to confront his greatest challenge yet, the courage to redefine himself on a larger stage. With a new sense of purpose, he resolved to seek out this next chapter. But as he planned, a troubling realization formed. How would he break the news to his family, who still viewed his janitorial work with a mix of pride and pity? The decision weighed heavily on him, but the stage of his dreams beckoned insistently. Would he risk everything to share not only his music, but the person he had become? Ethan stood at the crossroads of transformation, the weight of recent events anchoring him in reality. The echoes of applause still lingered in his ears, a vibrant reminder of the acceptance he so desperately craved. But as exhilarating as the performance had been, he grappled with the enormity of what lay ahead. He could no longer define himself by the job that had sustained him for years. The raw and honest musician had emerged, a revelation that demanded exploration. He drew a deep breath, stirring himself from the haze of uncertainty that often clouded his mind. The weight of his past as a janitor, a job once seen as a shackle, began to shift in meaning. It became apparent that his struggles only served to amplify the beauty of his music. That connection to his past offered him a rich tapestry to draw from, not a chain binding him to obscurity. Now, music could function as a lens through which he gained clarity and self-acceptance. With renewed vigor, Ethan sought opportunities to share his talent. He signed up for local gigs and open mics, every performance building his confidence. The community welcomed him, drawn not only to his talent, but to his authenticity. Musicians approached him with a camaraderie he had never dared to hope for, validating his transformation further. He began to expand his repertoire, writing original songs that encapsulated his journey, his triumphs mingled with heartfelt moments of sorrow. It was during a casual meetup at a cafe that Emily reached out, her expression filled with resolve. "How's everything going? I hear you've been performing quite a bit," she ventured, genuine curiosity filling her eyes. Ethan smiled, recalling the enthusiasm the music stirred within him. "It's going well. I've been busy, but I feel more alive than I have in years." Her brow furrowed slightly, a hint of worry creeping in. "Are you still planning on letting them know about your past, your dad, your struggles?" A flicker of apprehension arose within him. "I'm not sure how to approach that part yet. I want them to see me for who I am now, not just the janitor I used to be." "But those experiences are part of you," Emily insisted, her voice steady. You need to let them see every facet of your story. It's what makes your music authentic. That advice resonated deeply within him. The memories he had once grappled with now formed a crucial segment of his identity. Over the following days, Ethan penned a heartfelt letter to his estranged family, pouring his thoughts onto paper. In it, he shared how the weight of their assumptions had burdened him, how the janitorial work had enabled his passion to blossom in the shadows. He declared that embracing his past and pursuing music had become a personal revolution, one that challenged him to confront his deepest fears and insecurities. As he sealed the envelope, a newfound sense of relief washed over him. He had taken a significant step towards not just acceptance, but understanding. This was a transformation steeped in authenticity. Weeks passed, and the day came when he performed again, this time in a slightly larger venue, a local club known for showcasing diverse talent. As he stepped onto the stage, he conducted a small ritual, a moment to center himself, to connect his past with the unfolding future. He felt a palpable shift as he mentally invited every person in the audience to join him on his journey. Ethan persevered, pouring his heart into songs that revealed snippets of his history intertwined with hopes for the future. He spoke openly of his path, each hardship transformed into melodies that resonated with those listening. When he finished, the applause felt different, more meaningful, more profound. Backstage, he encountered familiar faces from the audience. They approached, eyes shimmering with enthusiasm and admiration. "Your story was incredible," one woman began, her voice warm. "It made your music even more powerful. Thank you for sharing." Ethan felt a rush of gratitude as he realized that these moments of connection were climbing walls he had built over the years. They no longer saw him merely as the janitor, but as an artist, a man brave enough to shed the skin of his fears. The thrill of the evening crescendoed as he found himself immersed in conversation, exchanging ideas, collaborations, and experiences with other artists. With every interaction, he felt a growing confidence solidifying his place in this vibrant world of creation. His phone buzzed later that week, a text from Emily lighting up the screen. "I'm proud of you, Dad," it read. "I see everything you've become. Can't wait to celebrate with you." The sentiments poured into him like sunlight breaking through the clouds. At that moment, Ethan understood that he had accomplished not just the reclamation of a lost passion, but the forging of an unbreakable bond with his daughter. This transformation, the convergence of his passion with acceptance, had rewritten the narrative of his life. No longer was he confined by the bravado of the corporate world. Instead, Ethan had emerged as a musician, a storyteller, a father reclaiming his role in his daughter's life. And so, he continued onward, seizing opportunities that lay ahead, fostering connections, showcasing his artistry, and honoring his story. Each step forward offered a fresh canvas to paint on, a testament to resilience and reinvention. Ethan was ready to embrace his journey fully, for he had finally found a home not only in the melodies but within himself. Therefore, to those reading this conclusion, you need to subscribe now for exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation and growth. Leave a like now to fuel the algorithm and keep these uplifting narratives alive in our community. Don't forget to comment your thoughts and reactions about Ethan's journey. Share the beauty of his growth and what it means to embrace every facet of who we are. And remember, you must share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see that their past doesn't define their future. Only the courage to evolve does. That's the power of personal overcoming stories. So don't wait even one more second to spread the message.